How do you have a daily huddle without people? How do you have a weekly work plan meeting without people? How do you do a pool plan without people? It's not about the tools. Tools are great, but they're just tools sitting there. They're just, lumps of inert whatever if they're not being used by people.
Welcome everybody to A Quality Podcast, Season 2. John Thacker and Jake Harrell here with Brian Winningham, who we invited on the show because he has winning in his name, and he is going to tell all of us how to win. Brian is the owner at Field Driven Lean, which specializes in construction, lean in the construction industry. Great topic that we've had with a couple of guests so far, and we can't wait for Brian to continue the conversation. Interesting topic here. We're discussing better, easier. Sort of a post-lean mindset. So Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk to you folks.
Well, we're excited to have you on too, although, we had to take some points away when we found out you knew Jesse Hernandez. So that's a strike. But other than that, no, I'm just kidding. Welcome to the show.
I think that maybe I ought to get some points for knowing him longer than almost anybody else. I mean, that's sort of a long-suffering thing there. Maybe I ought to get a little bit of credit that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You get long-suffering points there.
Interesting choice, John, that you picked winning out of his name and not ham.
If it was winning bacon, I would have gone with the bacon thing.
Yeah, winning bacon. That'd be a guy I'd bring onto the show in a heartbeat.
I would have to.
Mr. Thacker, you cannot have bacon without the ham.
Fair, it's the same animal. That is fair.
Yeah,
so, Brian, tell us a little bit about what you're doing today and what a day in your life looks like.
It depends. So, it's like most folks, my business was fairly well interrupted by COVID. Just this past week, I had my first business trip traveling to a client's office in 19 months. So that's been it's been a really great week for that reason, just that alone. So this week has been a little nuts, but lots of 4-hour sleep nights because of the travel, and I was on a red eye at one point, I think. But most time I'm really chasing that sleep hygiene and trying to make sure that I get a good night's sleep, and I got diagnosed with sleep apnea several years ago, and just getting a CPAP machine, stuff like that's really made just a huge difference. And no more dropsies and falling asleep in the middle of talking to you folks and stuff like that. So,
well, this podcast is well known for causing sleep apnea, so we are glad to have you. Tell us about Field Driven Lean.
So I was a project manager in construction for about 20 years. Before that, I had done various other jobs in construction. I started out in the field. Well, sort of. I actually started working in a lumber company when I was about 10 years old. Think about, imagine that if you crammed Home Depot into your Aunt Sally's house, about 2,500 square foot. And that's the place where I worked starting when I was 10 during the summers. So
back when lumber was new.
Yeah, it was a small town in Arkansas. I mean, I can't tell you, it was just different than a lot of other places, and a lot of different, opportunities because of that. If we lived in a big city, everybody would have been like, oh God, no, call child services. But, I loved it. I got up on my bicycle every morning and went to work. It was great.
That's awesome.
But, yeah, so I've been in construction like my whole life. My dad was an equipment operator. He pipelined when I was very small. He managed the lumber company where I worked. I mean, a little nepotism never hurt anybody, right? He also did, HVAC. He was an HVAC tech. It's what he finally did towards the end of his career is what he was doing when he retired. So it's kind of in my blood. It's been something I've done my whole life. Took a little stint out and joined the Army and was a Ranger for 4 years, but that tends to get you broken about as quick as working in the field does. So I ended up moving into the office finally, and spent the last 20 years or so as a project manager before opening my business. And now I get to go help folks, have better experiences in construction.
So of course, the working for yourself thing has some really cool aspects and some unique challenges, as I'm finding out. So congratulations on that. Takes
Yeah,
a
just for
pretty great,
anybody considering working for yourself, I mean, just whatever, however you price yourself, whatever number you put there, just know that 40% of whatever that number is going to Uncle Sam right off the bat. I mean, just you got to think about it that way, when you're starting a business, and you got to figure out what that number is that it takes for you to live on. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good job, but the boss is a bitch, let me tell you. Um, Toughest guy I ever worked for. So when we're talking about lean and lean in construction, I think as you go through different maybe industries, right? There's different flavors and different collective experience. So for contrast in my own career, working in tier one automotive supply chain, lean is a requirement, as is AQUIS, ISO, stuff like that. And so the people that are doing the work, this is how we do our job, and they don't know any better. Now that's good and bad, right? It's bad because, well, let's start with the good. It's good because it's getting you the consistent results you need to produce automobiles that don't kill people, right? And it's bad because there's a barrier to continuous improvement. Um, the fact that you're using lean tools doesn't mean that the human nature of we've always done it this way, magically goes away, right? Um, and occasionally, we'd run into folks, mostly engineers and management, honestly, not usually the people doing the work, but people in leadership positions that, if they couldn't find it in their Lean for Dummies book, then they wouldn't even consider, the option. And then moving from there to like retail consumer goods warehousing. I mean, that's like I don't know. It's like an ant colony, but without the order. Everybody's running around in a different direction. There's like trash on the floor. It's just a mess, and nobody cares because there hasn't been any financial incentive to clean that up, like in the history of retail, right? There kind of is now. There's a little bit of a supply chain push now that labor is getting more expensive, right? So different sector, different industry, different ethos. And of course, construction, where it's largely partnerships, you have trade partners, you have the GC, you have the client, you have the VC that, is the real client, all of these people working together. And, trade partners are eminently practical folks. I imagine that it has its own unique flavor. So tell me a little bit about that and the challenges with lean and continuous improvement in that environment.
Well, just the fact that you're calling them trade partner means that Jesse's already, infiltrated your mind, because most of my industry calls them subcontractors, and it's a contractual exchange, and that's all it is. And it's not a relationship. It's not building trust. It's not doing any of the things that you need to do to succeed. I mean, I can give you $1 and you can give me $1, and it doesn't change anything anywhere. I can give you $1 worth of work and you can give me $1 for it. And if nobody gives a shit about it, then it doesn't matter. I mean, and that's where we are. I mean, we think that somehow we can get compliance out of people because nobody cares.
Right.
And compliance is, I mean, that doesn't work. Ask the Soviet Union how that worked out for them.
Well, I'm a huge fan of what you said, your central theme of easier, better for this conversation. And why I'm a huge fan, if you look on John's desk there, you'll see my book, Chasing Excellence. And in the first page of the book is a quote by John that says, how do I get more of the outcomes I want, less of the outcomes I don't want for the least possible resources? And that struck me, more than enough to go on and write the book, and that's why it's on page 1. And I live by that mantra. There's no dogma, there's no specific approach. We're going to do whatever is better and easier. So tell us your approach to that.
I try to tailor that to the team that I'm working with. What do they need? What is it that they need? If I'm working with a young superintendent, is it that they need a mentor? Do they need, someone to talk to all the time so, if they're able to, maybe get them hooked up on text, and we're texting a lot, and that's a way that I can stay in touch and help them where it doesn't, break the bank for them or cost them a bunch of money or anything, and it doesn't cost me a lot of resource or capital either to do something like that. So, it's finding those touch points. And I am so genvious. That's a Jennifer Laceyism because she's a genius, and she's just amazing. I don't know if you folks have run into her yet or not, but Jen Lacey is amazing.
We run into her in a couple of weeks, don't we, John?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
So I'm not going to steal her thunder, but yesterday we were on Jessie and her morning collabo session on Saturday mornings, talking about lean in relationships, 5S in relationships, and she asked a question. So how do you have a daily huddle without people? How do you have a weekly work plan meeting without people? How do you do a pool plan without people? It's not about the tools. Tools are great, but they're just tools sitting there. They're just lumps of inert whatever if they're not being used by people. That the people is where it's all at, and that's the approach that I try to take too, Jake. I don't try to focus in any one direction. I try to start them on the things that I know that are going to be daily habits first and get those going. Those are easier a lot of times, just because you're doing them every day.
I love that you said collabo session first, because I had no idea how to pronounce that hashtag. I was going way too far. I was like, collabo session. I'm trying to think through that. That's how I started my morning as well. French. We were both on there at the same time. Fantastic conversation.
Jesse might speak a little Spanglish, but so you might throw a Cabo on there somewhere or something. But
so I like the conversation around tailoring it to the specific context, and really, if that wasn't necessary, we wouldn't have so many continuous improvement professionals out there, right? You can't just use a tool and it makes you better. Having said that, there is the psychology of just taking action that people miss when it comes to lean and continuous improvement. I worked for a site that was run by a company that had a business operating system, and it was a mature system, and they wanted to implement it at this site, which was a brownfield. We had taken over from a different supplier, and of course hired 90% of the people that were already doing the work. And of course that approach is ill-advised. And I was in the kind of position where I sort of had to coach senior management, and in a gentle way, you're a fucking idiot. But so we had a senior VP that
you have to say sir at the end of that.
Have to say sir. So we had a senior vice president that came to visit the site.
And it's sir, don't be a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
That's how you say it to him.
I just ordered you all your boards. And I'm like, you just ordered me all my boards. So we had like corporate branded visibility wall boards, and I'm like, okay, first of all, so you ordered an employee suggestion board. We don't even have like a process or habit in place for this. What's worse, not having one or having one that's not used? Right?
Not using the one you have. I mean, you lose trust.
Yeah, it's a big slap in the face to the employees, and they're just going to see all of this as some corporate project that doesn't matter to them, and so on and so forth. So you can't, the metaphor that I use, you can't go from 0 to 5th gear, right? And that's what this company was trying to do, right? They were in neutral on a hill, and they were trying to jam it into 5th gear and get rolling. Ill-advised, right? You've got to get into 1st gear first, get rolling, build steam. So there's a process to maturing, right? As a plant, any local instantiation, you have to follow through, the steps and the pathway. And you can see this with people who are trying to get into shape physically, right? So if you take somebody who is out of shape and you put them on a professional bodybuilding program, they're going to give up and fail and not get the benefits. Whereas if they can get up at 6 o'clock and just move their body for 30 minutes every day, they're starting down that pathway, right? And to me, both of those examples, one real world plant and one just how we behave as humans, are good examples of the better, easier, right? Which is do what you can right now.
I've got a book that I would love to recommend to you. It's called, oh gosh, I'm going to find it and tell you. Keep going.
Well, yeah, so with just human nature being what it is, overcoming that hindrance to getting started is the most important thing. And what you're doing can be improved upon later. But trying to go from sort of nothing to maturity, it just doesn't work in anything that we try, right?
Right. One of the things that I'm most often reminded of is when we bring engineered standards into a site that doesn't have documented processes. I mean, just day one, what are you even measuring? Where does this come from? I once worked at a site where just the indirect and the overall performance of the Maynard operating system was used, and versus no benchmark standards. So I just constantly have to tell myself, like, no matter what gear you are, you have to come to terms with precisely where we are. If you want to get traction, accept that and make baby steps towards that goal. So specific to your physical fitness comment, I got out and walked 4 miles today. Now, did I go to the gym and bench press 300 pounds? No, I would probably die. I am not built for that. Look at me. I am not sitting in the spot, but I'm going to start in a first gear and do everything I can to increase and get up to that 5th gear level.
So there's a book. The author's name is Dr. Robert Maurer, and he wrote One Small Step Can Change Your Life, the Kaizen Way. It's a really short book. It's really great. I'll throw the link to it in a chat here. But what he talks about is how that, our fight or flight instincts, when change is big, it triggers a fight or flight instinct in us. When we get faced with a great big change, it's traumatic, and we have to get faced with a fight or flight. Whatever our inclination is, depending. But by making incrementally small changes over time, we don't ever trigger that, and we ease into those changes so much easier because we do it as small bites. And it's just, he talks about the psychology behind it. And I always recommend this to all my construction folks, that they read this, and it has nothing to do with construction. They're like, oh, wow, we really love that. That's amazing. I'm so tired of reading lean books, and it's, even though it talks about the Kaizen way, it's not a lean book at all. It just goes back and says, the Japanese have known this for a long time, and this Kaizen is a way that they've adopted for their business work.
Well, I really enjoyed the spirit of that. And one of the things that made me fall in love with John's book, one, I was an operations supervisor at the time, and his book's titled How to Win as an Operations Supervisor right now. But it's succinct, and that's why the title is what it is he doesn't add long, expansive words. It is direct to the point. Here's the theory. Here's how you apply it. Here's what you physically need to do. In a space I felt was really missing, and I set out to do the same. Like, the whole book is 15 or 16,000 words. It is not a long, expansive book. It is engineered to take out all jargon. It does not once say Lean Six Sigma in the book. It is completely built around the simplest, most succinct way I can tell the story. What you need to do, you do precisely that. And it has a special place in my heart. Secondarily, I can tell you on the fight or flight response that is very real. And John and I both by default are fighters. So if you see us get in an 8-hour argument, it's because that's what triggers us. That's the direction we go.
We got scared. So we're fighting.
So you mentioned being in the Army. My brother Joe is a drillie at Fort Benning, and I think he just got transferred to the 82nd in Fort Bragg.
Good for him. Good. He's finally off the trail. That's a hard row to hoe.
Yeah,
They don't talk about it, but I mean, that's really one of the harder jobs in the Army, and there's a really high suicide rate, for active
yeah,
duty drill sergeants, higher
yeah.
than the rest.
Well, being in the service and working with operators, in the Asian theater, there are operators who are very effective at what they do. And then there's all of the people that have this fantasy of being an operator or being a soldier. And you know the type of person that I'm talking about. And for them, it's all about the image, and most of them are not actually in the service, right? And they'll
We
buy,
call them posers. Yeah.
yes, yeah, and they'll buy tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff,
Which
and
is great if they're buying it from veterans and
yeah,
spending
yeah,
their money
exactly,
for
right.
veterans
Keep
and
the
enriching the veteran
yeah,
community while they're doing that. The problem with a lot of those folks is they start trying to take on those personas
yeah,
and
yeah.
acting as if they've done those things. And
So they're,
the guys that really do those things, they don't talk about it too much.
right, but they get results, right? So the poser has got his, Roca eyewear and his Hamilton Field watch with the crown on the inside of the wrist and his cargo shorts, and like they have the whole.
511s.
Yes, yes, got the 511s. Um, and then and they will talk about theory, extraction theory, and so on and so forth. And then you have the people that actually do it for a living, right? And the difference is the true operators don't have a lot of dogma. They know how to get the job done, and they select the tool and the methodology and everything based on the context, right? The OODA loop, right? And that really has a lot of similarities to lean and continuous improvement, right? Where the folks that are really skilled at it and in the trenches, right? They are contextualizing their choices around better, easier, right? And that depends on your team. It depends on your contractual structure. There's so many factors that go into that, but you can always get better and easier, right? And what you can't do is fail the mission because you couldn't get everybody to agree on a black belt project, or you couldn't get everybody to agree to 5S the receiving dock, right? Um, and so there can be a stumbling block there, particularly when there's a lack of experience, I think, like real world experience, a stumbling block to serve the system when the system is supposed to be serving you.
Yeah, I wrote an article not too long ago on the Lean Builders blog, about planning, and about how, as an Army Ranger, everybody is part of planning, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. In a regular Army unit, it's not always that way, but in a Ranger battalion, when I served, and today, I know that it's still that way. Is everybody is involved in planning. Everybody gets a voice, from the very newest person to the person that's been there the longest, because it's life and death, and there's no possibility too small to investigate that we need to look at something. So that's something that's kind of I think missing in the civilian world a lot, is that we take for granted the people that are actually the value creators, the people that are actually creating value, especially in construction. We minimize them, we diminish them on a constant basis, and it's just so freaking wrong.
Yeah, and most of their roles are life and death. It really is. It
Well,
really is.
and most of our opportunity to save money and to make things safer are at that level. I
Hmm.
mean, that's where all of the, because that's what the owner's paying for at the end of the day, is what those people are doing with their hands. It's
Right.
not all the things that I think about in my mind as a leader on that project. My only job as a leader is to make things easier and better for my people, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a great, construction is a great example where, because of the dynamic, you're working with subcontractors, and the subcontractors are working with a rotating workforce. So the subcontractors can rotate, but even their workforce can. You might have the same company subcontracting, but you have a different foreman from job to job.
I had a project where I had maybe a requirement for about 15 framers on the project. The local framer here, this was when I was a project manager, the local framer here was actually hiring them from his competitor's labor service that they had started. He was giving them all the money that I was getting, his competitor, his dead even competitor, except they didn't have a labor service. That's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah. So in that context, getting all of the players to agree to a lean business operating system is what's the right word? I was going to say, pie in the sky fantasy, but maybe not that strong. But the amount of energy that would go into
Let's just
it,
call it a goal to still be a goal that we're still shooting for.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
A goal that we're still shooting for, right? But that doesn't mean you can't do better, easier. And everybody can appreciate that. Everybody knows that.
Thank you, John, for that long-winded description of the difference between attribute and absolute data.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, that was the most insightful thing I've ever freaking heard in my life. What are we going to do? I mean, I don't know that I can remember it now, though.
If you missed that, it is not coming back.
The camera won't switch to you unless you talk, Brian.
Okay.
So when we talk about better, easier, and some of the stumbling blocks, depending on your context, everybody can get behind better and easier. Once you start throwing jargon out there, that's when you start to lose people, right?
Yeah.
I work in Westminster, Maryland, run a factory out here, and I've got some really good dudes that run the place, and we do better and easier. And I'm actually practicing organic lean here, kind of an experiment where we're starting from nothing and training everybody. They're learning how to do lean from scratch, and we haven't used a single lean word. And there's a reason for that, and part of it is the people that we're working with. They don't want to speak Japanese. Why would they? Even if it wasn't cultural appropriation, I mean, these guys are all 25 years old. That's a real thing to that generation. The demographic that we're working with, they're just not interested. Why should they have to learn Japanese to run a good operation? And that's easy, right?
Yeah. Well,
all you have to do is take your ego out. And that's the challenge that I found with so many leaders is they're more concerned with being an expert than they are with getting results.
Well, the concepts aren't Japanese.
Right.
The concepts are universal. I mean, that's what, we fail to realize. The Japanese took advantage of some stuff that the U.S. decided to forget after World War II. I put together a Kaizen class for Lean Construction Institute. And as I was doing that, I did a lot of research, and where did lean come from and all that, It was really interesting to look at, the lack of capacity, manufacturing capacity that we had because of the Great Depression, coming all the way up until 1942, basically. People don't realize this, but unemployment was still 14% all the way through 1941. And that didn't really change until 1942 when it dropped to about 4%. And then it was basically zero in 44 and then started going up again in 45. Looking at all that history and understanding that these were American concepts, TWI, that's the basis of lean. If you want to get technical about it all, the training within industry, job relations, all those things. And those are really basic things. But, even at the heart of TWI was treating people with respect and understanding that, and because we don't have a choice.
It's like, did we have to write that down? Do we have to call that out? It's funny that we're in a situation where,
Jake, because we went away from it as soon as all the folks got back from World War II.
We're in a situation where we have to write that down. Like rule number 3 at work, don't eat people. holy shit. And like, I didn't realize I had to call this out. Yeah, maybe treat people better and they will work for you. And
Yeah, seriously. And that's just it for me, is finding ways to show people that. Now, the last planner system is a great tool, but it's been used incorrectly a lot and been forced down folks' throats and been just wielded like a battle axe instead of a tool to help people get better. So and we do this with pool planning, and everybody always wants you to come train them on pool planning and spend a whole day learning how to pool plan something that we do once every 12 weeks, maybe. Why?
John, I am humbly reminded when warehousing took off with like the first round of tier 1 WMS, there was not a single implementation globally that ever made anything better in the warehousing world, but we brought in the system and found a way to make it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I push now is those daily huddles, because we're doing those every day. We've got a chance to really make a difference. And you know what? Even the really resistant, older, as they're called, superintendents who are used to, the old way of doing things, of telling everybody how it is, they really like daily huddles, because it's one place where they get everybody together and they start to see the value in that, even if nothing else works for them. And I get a lot less resistance doing it that way. You really do.
Yeah, and you get people communicating, and that's a foundation you can build on as you start to add in more stuff, right? Just people talking and working together, right? Without that, doesn't matter what tool you think is going to work if people aren't talking to each other, right? And Jake, that's a great call out. That I think the technology aspect or sector of operations is a classic example of where we're not trying to make it better or easier. Somebody got a bee in their bonnet and got drunk at a trade show and signed a contract they shouldn't have, and made best buddies with somebody. And next thing you know, you have autonomous guided vehicles that are designed for picking things up with forks that are trying to do clamp work when they're not designed to do it. And you're spending millions of dollars to replace fork truck operators because you didn't think through what you were doing there. You weren't making it better or easier. You just decided to buy some technology.
Mm-hmm. The whole motion does not equal progress, right?
Innovation, right? Big old scary leaps forward, and that's like I talked about that book. That's why it doesn't work. If we innovate our way out of something, that's just the times that's happened in our country has been very, very small. I guess maybe the moon landing would be one way. World War II would probably be a something to look at. But even that's years, not minutes.
Yeah. And if that example I gave seems oddly specific, it's because it was a real life dumpster fire that Jake and I both dealt with. So. When you look up dumpster fire in the encyclopedia, there's literally a photograph of this operation.
I've been in some situations with probably some competing photos there also.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, but it's true, the Ubermenschen philosophy, right, that has permeated kind of Western capitalism in general, but this idea that you're going to have some Elon Musk that rescues you, right?
The great man theory.
The great man theory. You're going to have some Terminator robot or some technological breakthrough that just bam solves all your problems. There's people after me. When James Cameron was directing that movie, obviously he's very good at telling stories, right? So, but what's the basic premise? The basic premise is somebody that is weak is in trouble, and they have this Deus Ex Machina, thing that happens in the movie where you have this perfectly created, robot killing machine to protect you. So it's like the ultimate fantasy, right? Well, that's Hollywood. They're supposed to do that. We don't live in Hollywood. We live in real life, right? So if someone's trying to sell you the T-1000 that, can morph into whatever and kill whatever and keep you safe forever, like, it's not real, right? That's a Hollywood fantasy. But we treat Our business is that way sometimes. Industry 4.0 is going to solve our problems. No, it's not. Because your problem isn't that you don't have industry or you don't have technology. Your problem is that your leaders all suck. You
So
can't.
you
Yeah,
brought something to mind. You brought something to mind for me, and it's something that I've started this year. It's something new that I'm trying, and I've put together a cohort. It's 6 folks, and we get together once a month for 2 hours. And I do a little bit of directed learning, maybe 15, 20 minutes. Uh, Sometimes not even that. And we just talk. We work on problem solving. They bring their problems to these meetings, and they get access to coaching. I'm purposely targeting people at like project manager level and lower, because they don't get access to coaching. Those folks never get access to anybody helping them
That has
understand
such
how
a
to get
special
better.
place in my heart because once a week you can find John and us on Clubhouse. We do Work It Out Wednesdays where literally anyone can come, give us any problem, personal, professional, mental, and we're going to help you talk through it.
Well, it was really cool because, one of the things we did this week, because it's first Friday of every month right now, and I'm looking to get another cohort started here pretty soon, somewhere between 6 and 9 folks.
Well,
But
send me an
what
invite.
I will. Uh, what we talked about this week was trust, and how do we define it, and that's something that I'm working on right now. I got challenged, and I really couldn't just off the top of my head say what it is. I know what it looks like, but
Uh, I've
what
got
attributes are there?
I've got a fun thing for you to try if you are so willing. I did a team building course about a month ago with a group. And within that group, we did a trust exercise where I said, what are the attributes of trust? List me 3 to 5 bullet points on what you think the attributes of trust are. And we just mixed them all up in a hat. And I got someone to come up and read them all out. And every time we felt one was different, put it on the board. And we only came up with like 6 bullet points, despite a team of 12 people all writing their own thing out of their own
Yeah.
brain. I'm like, so this is what this means to you guys. And it is contextual and different in different groups. And we ended up turning that into like a commitment board of these are the things we are going to do as they relate to that. And it was a very, very moving exercise.
Well, we did a little bit differently. I had them list every attribute they could think of that mattered to them with trust. And I ended up with like 15, 16 myself. And then I had them think of a person, whoever they would like for that to be, and rate them 0 to 100 on each attribute. And then average it. You can actually score someone on how well you trust them. And the challenge to everybody was to go use themselves. That's the scary one, right? That's the one you don't want to share with anybody else.
Yeah, don't let my wife give you a score. Don't let that happen.
Well, I mean, what about scoring yourself, Jake? That's the one where, most of us are going to probably be pretty hard on ourselves in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
and I think, we also have to understand that trusting other people starts with trusting us and growing that trust in ourselves. And, but knowing which things, and you can actually see how you can work on things by doing that. My therapist gave me that little exercise. So yeah, I shared it with them, and they were like, "Wow, this is great! I'm going to use this with my team." It's just it's
Leadership
not
is a
that you're going to
Rorschach
change
test, right?
anybody, but it helps us kind of see why we react to people the way we do sometimes. I think,
Yep.
and also maybe why they react to us the way they do.
Yeah. Leadership is a Rorschach test.
Yeah, you are most certainly projecting your own emotions and feelings into the world every time words come out of your mouth. Most certainly.
Yeah. How you feel about yourself, right, directly influences how you feel about others and the assumptions you make about their motivations and actions and stuff like that, right? So one of my challenges as a leader is I'm very disciplined, aggressive, and controlling with myself, right? For me, it's you're going to get up at 4:30 every day, which I do, except when I wake up before my alarm clock, right? It's you're going to work out every day of the week, of the work week, not Saturday and Sunday. I take time off, right? And there's that self-talk that goes into that, right? Like, get your lazy ass out of bed, get in the gym, push that fucking iron, all of that.
But if we're going to be kind to other folks, John, we need to learn to be kind to ourselves a little bit too, right?
You're exactly right. So it was
Yeah.
probably 10 years ago that I got into my like self discovery journey, because I had gotten to the point where my performance reviews were less about like my capability and knowledge and more into the, hey, you're a leader of a team now. You're not executing anymore, right? And so leadership matters.
It's a
And that's
huge jump for
when
people to make, though. You
it's
know
a
what? That is
huge
a
jump.
really huge jump. We take, and we approach leadership all wrong in the U.S. so many times. We take someone who's really, really great at what they do and just assume that they're going to be really great at teaching other people how to do that and leading them on how to do that. That's
Yeah.
not always the
Yeah,
case.
and then we thrust
We
every
don't train
leader in
them
the
to do it
country.
either.
We thrust every leader into ambiguity, and then we go, "Why haven't y'all figured it out?"
Yeah, we don't give them any training on how to be a leader, on on the importance of self-reflection and any of that kind of crap. We just say, now you're a leader. Go do the same stuff you've been doing. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay.
I can count formal leadership training hours on one hand, like just for sure.
And Brian, that's literally my story. Like that's exactly what happened to me, right? And to others. And that's why I wrote my book, Zoom, How to Win Right Now as an Operations Supervisor, because I had no instruction. And as I moved up in the org and had to hire supervisors, I realized that they had the same problems I had. And so I just went on Amazon, went on Google, and tried to find relevant books for them. And you know what? They didn't exist. And I was like, well, then I'm going to write it. Gosh darn it. So very, very prescient observation there. And you're absolutely right. Like I had to come to terms with my own ego and the fact that, this tough guy thing that I had been doing for 30 years on this planet was actually rooted in, some unhealthy psychology, lack of self-acceptance, lack of self-kindness, almost this idea that I'm not capable of execution, without being mean to myself.
Yeah,
Right?
you overachieve because you always feel you're not good enough to because you're
Yeah.
always chasing that, right?
Yeah,
And
now he just takes it out on me, and he's good.
Yeah, I just transferred that all, over to Jake.
transference. That's
But yeah, right. But you're exactly right. So if I'm treating myself that way, right? I'm overcompensating for never being good enough for myself. That means that when my team is trying hard, they're never going to be good enough either,
you don't
right?
won't be able to recognize it, right?
Right. Yep.
Mhm. You can't even come to terms with easier, better. You're just more and harder.
You're
Yeah.
too focused on concentrating what's gone on in the past instead of being present on what's happening now. And that's the key, I think, is that everybody sort of figures out as they work through this stuff and that's not easy. I understand that. There's always things that are cropping in on folks' minds and stuff. And, you know, I mean, I wake up some days and it's just a blizzard in my head,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you try to get out of those. You try to find a center and find a place where you can be helpful to people, because you can't when you got all that stuff going through your head. It's a whole lot harder to be helpful.
Well, I cribbed a fairly useful technique from Shaolin. They make a distinction between sitting meditation or still meditation and moving meditation. And for them, when they go out and the physical drills they're doing are extremely demanding, right? But they call that moving meditation. And it's the same principle of there's nothing in my mind except the motion. I'm focused 100% on the execution of this motion. And I've actually stolen that in those times when I can't, sit and meditate. I might be at work and I'll just commit. There's some concerns that I have that are overshadowing what's going on right now. Those are important, but now is not the time to think about it. And so I'm going to commit to just going through the motions. I'm going to focus on my physical activity at this point in time. And it works pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's like when you meditate and they're always talking about coming back to your breath and stuff like that. That's that physical output of that, that you concentrate on to sort of center yourself the same way. when I'm out walking in the mornings. I try to walk pretty regularly. I've had 6 surgeries on my knees, so I'm not running a whole lot anymore, but not right now. Not right now, but I do walk pretty regularly, and I have had those times walking where you do lose yourself. I know that I used to do it a lot running, and that you get that hypoxia from being out of breath and the oxygen and all that. I miss that part of running, but sometimes I have been able to find it just by being present, being in that, being there and being centered when I'm walking. It's good that way too. So
Yeah, a great LinkedIn connection of mine, Alberto, said in a conversation with us actually that if you just start moving the hands, like you'll generally win over your heart and your mind.
Yeah,
I love that. That's awesome.
Yep.
It's awesome. Yeah. And the rest too, right? Just getting out there and going and doing it, and it's the same with some of this stuff too. I went the team that I went engaged with this week. They wanted to know if I had needed some time to do the training, to teach everybody how to do it. And I was like, you know what, this is something we don't need to spend a lot of time training on. We'll learn by doing today, and it'll be just as good, I promise. And it was. They were happy, and we ended up getting twice as much work done by doing it that way.
Awesome. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, thank you for a wonderful and far-reaching conversation around better, easier, and
Stream of consciousness.
Man, I feel like this could be a 3-hour deal and I wouldn't stop talking to you and just having a high octane time. Like I would just laugh the whole time away.
We're definitely going to have you back on to continue the conversation. I think the main takeaway for me is don't let the context that you're in keep you from succeeding. Focus on better, easier, and everybody can do that in any context. And
you control the context, right? I mean, you get to say, you get to make a decision. It doesn't matter what yesterday or even last second was like. You get to say.
Great word. So tell folks how they can get in touch with you.
The easiest way is probably just via email, bmw@fielddrivenlean.com.
BMW, what an acronym, man. The last name has winning in it. The initials are BMW.
The ultimate driving experience, baby.
All right. Brian, thanks for coming on. Jake, you as well. For everybody out there in YouTube land, thank you for joining a Quality Podcast. Have a good week.
Thank you.